can we please give a huge ba-ba-ba cheer and welcome to Pete Fitch.
Thank you very much. As it so happens, my grandparents, it's really weird, they were called Pearl and Dean. Or as we called them, Grandma and Grandpapa. Anyway, I'm here to talk to you about the joy of failure and how we should embrace failure, not fear it. We've been conditioned to be afraid of making mistakes, but mistakes can be good. We'll start off with some heavyweights to start off with. Albert Einstein. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. And then here we've got Sir Alexander Fleming, who was the person who discovered penicillin, arguably the most important discovery of the 20th century, which has saved millions and millions of lives. But it was 1928 when he discovered it. It started when he had a whole lot of Petri dishes, and he's very conveniently set up a whole lot of Petri dishes here for us to see. And he was doing an experiment. He left the Petri dishes there, but he was a little bit slapdash with how he stacked them. And then over the weekend, whilst he was away from his laboratory, they slipped down and the cover came off one of the Petri dishes, and it ruined the experiment that he'd had. He came in the morning and discovered that the top had come off, and his experiment was a failure. But then, when he looked at it, something had happened within the culture that he'd left there that he wasn't expecting, because it had been exposed. I'm no biologist, so I don't really understand the ins and outs of it. But he basically noticed that there was something that he wasn't expecting so as he was about to throw them away, he it made a little kind of sort of light bulb come on in his head, and it was through that mistake that he discovered penicillin. So arguably penicillin, the most important discovery of the 20th century, came through a mistake. But we've got the heavyweights out, and now we're going really for some of the these are the failures that really have kind of piqued my interest. And it was actually this story that I'm going to tell you next, which was the one that really got me. It was happening in 2012, and that was when I kind of first started thinking about failure and about its consequences. This is a painting. It was a fresco. It's by a Spanish artist called Elias Garcia Martinez. It's called Echo Homo. It was painted in around about 1930, and it sat unremarkable, unnoticed, in a church in a small town in Andalusia, in a small town called Boya. We're getting to the 21st century. It had started to decay, started to sort of fall apart, and one of the parishioners said to the priest, said, it's not looking that good. We haven't got lots of money. I will restore the painting for you. And the priest said, that's brilliant. We haven't got a lot of money. That's great. And this is what happened. And the lady involved is called Celia Jimenez. She was, and everyone went absolutely bonkers. They kind of said this was cultural vandalism, and she gave a whole series of interviews. She was really feisty. She kind of went, no, piss off. No one else was doing it. I said I'd do it. I did my best. It didn't quite work out right. And then this is where the really interesting thing happens. Then obviously the story kind of went global, and people started coming to the church to see it. It became a tourist attraction. Up until that point, the church used to have around about 6,000 visits a year. And after this, it got 60,000 visits a year. It's a small town, so it's a small town of about 4,000, the population of 4,000. So it went from having kind of around about 100 visitors a week, so like 10, 15, to having over 1,000 visitors a week. And all the local businesses started doing really well. The church, the collection there went up. They earned so much money. They were able to open to build and open an old people's home and to fund it. And it's still going today. The numbers of people coming to it. And so out of this failure, out of a painting that, let's face it, everyone could have said beforehand, Ecce Homo, it wasn't talked about, it wasn't seen as a particularly important painting, but it's now become a sort of internet sensation. Interestingly enough, if you look it up on Google, Ecce Homo is now credited on Wikipedia. It's credited to Elias Garcia Martinez and Cecilia Jimenez. She's now the joint artist of this work of art. We're going to stay in the world of art now, and our next failure, brilliant failure, is this chap. Now this is Jan Tegan. Jan Tegan, he was in a prog rock band in Norway in the early 70s, who were quite successful within Norway, but then he went solo in 1978, and he represented Norway at the Eurovision Song Contest. And it was the first time, for the sake of purposes, without me getting too technical, it was the first time that anyone had ever scored nil points. I'm going to show you a short extract of Jan Tegan's performance from that day. Oh, have we got volume? Oh. And let me go back. Ready?
Som driver dig, det liv som du kan se. Tänk dig om, du har vandrat allt för länge.
He comes over as a cross between Jarvis Cocker with a bit of Julian Cope. And then there's some sort of weird grace movement. Also looks a bit like that guy out of Rainbow. And now it's ramping it up. With a great... Yeah, fantastic. Nil points. It got 0 points. 0 points. It was the first time that it ever happened. Within the new... they'd had a new voting system. No one had ever got nil points. He went back to Norway, and he kind of wasn't apologetic about it. He kind of, there have been subsequent to that. I think there's been 3 or 4 other people who have got nil points. Gemini, which is it's kind of a car crash TV. It was worth watching in 2003. They got nil points, but they were UK entry. They got nil points because they sang completely out of tune, like kind of about. Not even a semitone, or a whole tone out of key. Meal after meal. I mean, I can still sing. I can sing it. The song's in my mind. He's not out of tune. All right. There's some sort of weird braces number going on, and there's a bit of a weird kind of rock star sort of star jump, which is a bit out of his kind of. It's not really a rock song, but he gave it. He was giving it his all, and he went back to Norway, and instead of just going, he just kind of went, do you know what? I did it. I kind of gave my all, you know, tough shit. If they don't like it, then whatever. And Norway, the people of Norway just got really pissed off. They were going, how dare you, Europe, say that we're shit? How dare you say that our guy's shit? And what they did is they bought the record, and it went to #1 in the Norwegian charts. It went to #1, it was #1 in Norway for 5 weeks. It was in the top 10 for 18 weeks. It was the biggest selling single in Norway in that year. And then Jan Tegan, he kind of just embraced kind of this loser tag. So his follow-up album was called This Year's Loser. He brought out in 1980, he brought out a single called New Point. And he's built, you know, he had a successful career off the back of it. If you go to his hometown in Tonsberg, you can have yourself a photograph next to the statue that the people of Tonsberg have put up in honour of Jan Tegan. In Sweden, there is a museum of failure where they celebrate things that are wrong, mainly with sort of inventions. There's things like the Bic for her, because I mean, you ladies, you probably find it quite hard normally with a standard Bic, you know, the manly Bic. You need one beautifully smooth for your delicate hands. Which that didn't do well. There's also the Eau de Toilette of Harley Davidson, which somehow just didn't quite have the resonance. Although maybe you would find yourself on Dragon's Den and you go, hello Dragons, I'm here to put forward a pitch. I'm looking for £100,000 investment in turn for a 10% return in my new product, which is Colgate beef lasagna. Now, there are some objects which we can see quite clearly, almost straight away. You can see why they failed. There's other objects which actually, and this is one that's in pride of place in the Museum of Failure. It's the Betamax video recorder. So in the early 80s, so for those youngsters in the audience, there used to be a thing called videos, and there was a battle quite early on between the two systems. It was either VHS or Betamax. For a while they were going head to head, and then VHS just became the dominant one. But in fact, it turns out that Betamax is widely considered to have been the superior product. The quality was much better. If we're ever watching anything back on TV that was recorded back in the 80s and 90s that's on the archive, on a BBC or ITV archive, the industry standard was to use Betamax because the quality was that much better. But it was all about, sometimes it's not necessarily about the best item winning or the best thing. So sometimes things aren't a failure necessarily because they're a bad product. It's just about the marketing. And VHS were just, whoever was the marketing guru behind VHS was just better at pushing it. And so that's why VHS won. But from a purely technical point of view, Betamax was widely considered to be the better thing. So sometimes things fail, not because they're a bad idea, but just through chance. There's another one. This next one, you will those of a certain age will all recognise this next product, which was the Sinclair C5, which came out in the mid-80s. Now, this did not fail because of a PR disaster. Whoever was doing the PR, everybody of a certain age in this room knows this product, although they only ever sold 5,000 of them. But my God, it was on TV all the bloody time, and so we all knew it. It was an electric, it's a crazy idea, an electric vehicle that you would recharge every night to go, but it just didn't take off. There were various sort of issues with it. It was kind of much mocked at the time. But you look at this vehicle, which is brought out. It's called the Toyota i, which is an electric single person vehicle which you recharge, and you can kind of see that there's a genesis there. Sometimes things fail. And maybe I'm being a little bit too simplistic, because there were certainly some issues with the Sinclair design, but sometimes things fail just because they're in the wrong time. Now, failures, they teach us a lot about ourselves. There will be a certain number of people in 1997 who will remember this moment when there was a general election. John Major had called a general election, and Labour won with a landslide with Tony Blair. And the pivotal moment that everyone was kind of saying, were you up for Portillo? And that was the point. It was like, were you up at 4 o'clock in the morning? The moment that Michael Portillo, who was much hated by many people on the left, kind of, he was a cabinet minister, and he lost his seat. And it was amongst a certain group of people, there was much rejoicing at his demise. He was loathed. He was absolutely loathed. And yet now, I didn't like him either. And yet now, I will quite happily sit down and watch him get on a train. And he's reinvented himself. And by his own admission, he was really taken aback at just the strength, how people were so celebrating his demise. He didn't kind of realise just how hated he was, and he he took a good hard look at himself. And you can, if you were to look at Portillo 97, pre-97 and post, you'll see like a softening of that person. He's learned from that mistake. You know, he's learned from the failure. He's learned from his lowest point. One of the things about failure is, so sometimes we can learn something about ourselves, and sometimes failure is good. Failure in other people is good, because what it means is we can laugh at other people. So if you watch The Apprentice, with all its kind of sort of making money kind of sheen, it isn't really about that. We watch The Apprentice not to watch how good people are, but you watch The Apprentice to see how shit all these kind of these young kind of yuppies are, and you sit and watch and you enjoy, and you sit there in the comfort of your chair and you go, oh my god, they're absolutely, oh, I can't believe they're trying to sell Cornish pasties for £6, and what it does is it makes us feel better about ourselves. It's as Germans call it Schadenfreude. So failure is also good, especially failure for other people makes us feel better about ourselves. When we watch comedy, lots of comedy is based on failure. Laurel and Hardy or Mr. Bean. So you know, we or stand-ups often they're kind of mocking how rubbish they are, and we enjoy that aspect of it. We also enjoy, I'm just going to show you a really short clip. There's also, sometimes when things fail, they're really bad. They really fail so bad. And then they take on a whole new meaning. I'm going to show you a clip, a very short, sort of 40-second clip. This is from a film that is right up there. There's a few films which are considered to be the worst film ever made, and this film is one of them. It's called Birdemic, and here we are. Basically, there's an unexplained epidemic of birds attacking people. Here we go. They decided to arm themselves with wire clothes hangers. Oh my god, here come the birds. Here they come. God, there we are. Striking. This film is an hour and a half long as well. Like, this isn't a trick. She can't open it. It's Jeopardy. Oh my god. Still can't open the door. Keep on the same shot. There they are. Hovering. And that one doesn't even flap its wing. Oh, still. Great. So anyway, yeah. So sometimes failure. We enjoy things when things are really bad. You might have known this quote: "Ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again, fail better." Interestingly, Samuel Beckett. I was intrigued by that, and that's kind of used in the world of industry. I'm going to give the example of Dyson. This is James Dyson. With his Dyson vacuum cleaner. Now, obviously, we know when you make something before it goes to the market, you have to create prototypes. James Dyson made his first prototype. It didn't work. So he had to go back to the drawing board. He had to make another one. You know, it was a failure. It wasn't good enough. And then he made another one. And then he made another one. Then he made another one. He made 5,127 prototypes before he got to the final product that was good enough to go. So basically, he failed 526 times before that product went. So failure is really important. He didn't just go after the 3,000, although I probably would have given up at 3,600. He didn't just go, "Oh, sod it." He used that mantra. Try again, fail better. Winston Churchill.
Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
And he's often, almost always, if they say the greatest Britons of all time, Winston turns up there at the top. But if you look at Winston Churchill, he led us through our darkest hour. But if you bother having a look back into Winston Churchill's career, it was peaks and massive troughs. He was the minister of. He was head of the Admiralty during the World War I. He oversaw the absolutely catastrophic Gallipoli campaign, when thousands upon thousands of Allied servicemen died on the beaches at Gallipoli. He lost his seat. He came back. He was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer when Britain went into recession in 1929, and a lot of his dealings with the gold standard were seen to kind of exacerbated Britain's failure. He was out. He lost his seat again. In the 1930s was kind of the wilderness years. He wasn't even an MP. He kind of came back, and he was very much kind of sort of the background guy. But his career was just sort of up and down, and he was like one of those boxers who just keeps on getting knocked down, and the referee's counting, but he always got up just before the count, and he'd keep on going. So he was the best when we were at when we were against the ropes. Winston Churchill, they turned to Winston Churchill. He's the man who just will not say no, who won't give up on failure. If you ever see those lists of greatest Britons, you've got Winston Churchill, and of course we know that he was successful, but also he lost straight after the war. He was kicked out, 1945, unceremoniously, lost the election. Yet again, in 1951, he didn't give up. He came back and he won the election. If you look in that list of top 10 greatest Britons, you'll probably also see Ernest Shackleton. Now that's Ernest Shackleton smoking a pipe, surveying his boat. It's not looking good. If you learn about Ernest Shackleton's career, it's one of kind of like of great endeavour, but often of failure, but it's how he managed those failures. On this one, the boat had got trapped in the ice; it was crushed. He surveyed it, and he just sort of went, "Well, the boys, I think we better go home." And then they just sort of walked off across the ice, and miraculously they all survived. One of our other heroes is Scott of the Antarctic, who's famous for having failed in his mission. He tragically died, but we salute him for the way that he failed. We salute him not for the final product, because he didn't get there first. He got beaten and he didn't get back. So that's not the reason why he's in the top 10. The reason is because of the way that he handled himself in the face of failure. We love a loser. We love a loser. We love Eddie the Eagle Edwards. So he was a man who was just a personality in the UK, not because he was a brilliant ski jumper, but precisely because he was the worst ski jumper. He would finish last in every single ski jump. It would just be an amazing feat that he actually stayed on his feet. But we loved him. Another one in the world of sport. This is from the 1956 Grand National. The Queen Mum, it's her horse. The Queen Mum had never won the Grand National. Here we go. This is Devon Lock.
And now GSB taking up the challenge as Eagle Lodge drops back. But Devon Lock's going strongly at jump 29, and he looks to the crowd as though a royal Windsor certainty. Into the final straight with victory in sight for Devon Lock.
They've gone over all the jumps. Here we are.
Devon Lock can't lose. ESB streaks past to win by 10 lengths with
Devon Lock
second and Royal
loses.
Devon Lock's on his feet again, but it's too late. The most
That's how close it was.
Grand National history.
How close it was. And it's passed into the terminology. Doing a Devon Lock is, in sporting terms, is a phrase meaning basically to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. The jockey here, you see this is the jockey having got off absolutely just absolutely distraught. He was a very, very successful jockey. He actually was so distraught that he kind of just saw it as a sign he could not continue, and he walked away. He was, although he'd been a champion jockey in previous years, he walked away and kind of just decided that he just this was a sign he couldn't do it anymore, and he turned his back on the world of horse racing, never to be heard again. His name was Dick Francis, and he wrote a book or two, I think. So sometimes when you fail at something, sometimes it's a wake-up call. You know, try again, fail again, fail better. Sometimes it's actually go and do something else. And failure can be good from that. You know, we cannot all be brilliant at everything. Actually, he was very good, but we can't all be very brilliant at everything. Here's another great example from the world of sport. This was in the World Cup. I think it was in the quarter-final. It was England against Colombia. We've gone to penalties. England traditionally really rubbish at penalties, but they won. They won the penalty shootout, but people noticed that when, as all the English players were celebrating, the England manager Gareth Southgate went over to the Colombian striker who had missed the crucial penalty and consoled him, and everybody kind of was going, oh, you know, what a lovely gesture that was. But it was particularly present because that's Gareth Southgate having just missed a penalty in the 1996 Euro final. So he had been that man. He knew what it was like, and he was able to have empathy. So failure teaches us. We can learn from it. We can learn and we can be better ourselves. But also we can empathise with other people who fail as well. In the world of art, this is Confederacy of Dunces, a great book, if you haven't read it, John Kennedy Toole. It won the Pulitzer Prize in 1981. The only thing is that John Kennedy Toole had committed suicide in 1969 because he couldn't get his book published. What he did is, what happened was his mum got the manuscript and she just started taking it round to everyone. She just kept on knocking on people's doors, just going, read this, and then eventually somebody went, oh God, started reading it, they loved it, they put it out, it became an absolute sensation. So the moral of the story there is, be really nice to your mum. Vincent van Gogh famously was very unsuccessful during his lifetime. I mean, I think his paintings would probably be right up there in that they hardly ever turn up for auction. This is the only painting, the only known painting that he sold during his lifetime. It's called Vinefield at Arles. It sold for about 400 francs, which is about £2,000 in today's terms. So sometimes you can be a great artist, but it might not necessarily be now. Sometimes you're a failure now, but it may not be there in the future. I've always had a thing about the underdogs and failures. I love On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the James Bond film with George Lazenby, in part because George Lazenby absolutely screwed it up, and he walked away from being James Bond, and he's kind of doing a Lazenby. It's almost like doing a Devon Locke. I love the musician Chet Baker. He was a brilliant jazz musician who just kind of threw his life away. He ended up dying after falling out of a window, having played to 28 people at his final ever show. But now his kind of legacy, people really, people kind of rediscovered him. Now, one of the reasons why I've been really interested in failure is because and I'm sure lots of you have had failures in their lives, and I've had one in particular, and I will talk briefly about it. I was in an indie band, that's me, in 1992 to 1994. Now, so the failure is relative. So I was in a band. I was signed to a very reputable label, Creation Records, and I got to tour the world. And we brought out our album. This was our album. But I wanted my band to be massive and really important. I had various aims. I wanted to be on the front of the NME. I wanted to play the Royal Albert Hall. I wanted to be on the top of the pops. I never got to do anything at any of those things. This album was our first album. This came out. It went to number 70 for 1 week in the charts, which is better than the Velvet Underground ever did in their lifetime. Despite the fact that Velvet Underground are an incredibly important band, but during their lifetime, the Velvet Underground were playing gigs to just like 30, 40, 50 people, and their album never charted, despite the fact it sold millions of copies subsequently. My band split up because of press indifference and lack of sales and the ubiquitous sort of band arguments, and for many years I kind of held that. I did take responsibility. I think it's important to take responsibility for failure. Often musicians will often point the finger and the foot. If you read biographies, they often sort of say about how, it's the record company weren't behind us and blah blah blah. And often you listen to the album, the second or third album, the one that flopped, and it's just not very good. And our second album wasn't as good as our first album, and I was quite outspoken in the music press, and the press really didn't like that. So I had to take a lot of responsibility for it. And I for years, I kind of processed that. I've taken my share of the blame. But it's always been with regret. The band's kind of split up on a real kind of low. And then on the 25th anniversary of us splitting up, we decided that we were going to get back together again. So we announced that we were going to get back together again. We hired a place called Bush Hall in London, which holds about 500 people. We put tickets on sale, and the tickets, 500 was the biggest gig that we'd ever played in England prior to that, sort of back in the 90s. So we thought we'd sell it out. And the tickets went on sale, and the tickets sold out in a minute. So we put the second show on, and the second show sold out in 5 minutes. And then we put out a third show in a bigger venue, Scala, and again that sold out. And here we are, and we were able to rewrite the end of our history. So for us, the ending had always been a failure. For 25 years, we'd kind of taken that on, that, we'd achieved certain things, but we hadn't, it felt that it ended on a low. And we ended these gigs on an amazing high. People travelled from all over the world to come and see us, and it was an incredibly, genuinely humbling experience. And I'd never been in a room, because everybody had been up 1 o'clock in the morning buying their tickets. Everybody was a massive fan of the band. They sang along to every single song. So, to summarise, failure is really important. We've got here a young girl, and she's making a tower of bricks. But but ultimately, she's gone too far, and the bricks are going to fall. It's really important. We have to learn to fail. She is learning that you cannot indefinitely put bricks on. That is part of our learning process. When you have a pot, we could have a pot, and it could be made in a factory, and it will be perfect. It will be and it will be exactly like the next pot next to it, and the 100 others pots that you make. Or you make a pot individually, like this one's being made, and it will be unique. And the reason it's unique is because it is not perfect, because it has tiny little imperfections. And it's those imperfections that make that pot unique, and that pot is worth more money than the mass-produced one. It's not perfect, but that's the whole point. It's not perfect. And that's all about us as well. If we were all the same, if we were all perfect, what a dull, dull, dull world that would be. But we all have our little flaws and our little failures in ourselves, in our makeup, and that's what makes us individuals. And that's why we should celebrate those failures, and not be afraid of them. Thank you very much.